Abby, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so talking about before your injury. First of all, wait, what was your injury?
I tore my ACL.
Tore your ACL, okay. Was it like during a game or like during practice?
It was technically during our regular season, but we had a scrimmage after our first game, so it was in a scrimmage.
Okay, gotcha. So it was at like the very beginning of your season?
Yeah, my sophomore year.
That's tough. Okay. Okay, so before your injury, do you remember doing any sort of training with like reaction time or like visual learning or perception, like that's related to reducing injury, like preventing injury? Do you remember doing anything like that?
I mean, not really. The only thing that we would really do is like during weightlifting, we would do like, I mean, different sorts of like jumps, whether it's like, you know, like skiers where you like jump back and forth, like that kind of stuff. But other than weightlifting, we didn't have any sort of like psychological like interventions or that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. Do you feel like your mental or psychological abilities played a role in your injury? So example, like hesitation, confidence, beliefs towards safety, any of that?
I would say, because I know sometimes people tear their ACL like on their own, like without anybody touching them. Mine was like physical contact, so like a girl was behind me and she like when I was like running backwards to pass the ball back and she like kicked like the inside of my leg and kicked my leg out. So I don't like in that scenario I would say no, like it didn't. But I mean I obviously knew that like she was behind me, so I guess there could have been some like internal like factor, but I feel like not really compared to how some people's is where, you know, they like just do it by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so after getting injured, do you feel like you've had a fear of injury or a change in how you go about safety?
I would say there definitely like was a period of time because like right after I tore it, before I got surgery and everything, I wasn't really scared of anything because it was already torn. So like I was like running and working out and stuff. But then obviously after I got the surgery and then when I was first like coming back into it, I was like really nervous, especially to do like the first like sort of like jumps. Like they had me jumping on like a really small like whatever, like a little pad thing, and like it was only like that high, but it was still scary, especially doing like one-legged jumps or like anything like one-legged zigzags. So like anything that was just this leg especially like made me really nervous, even though I know that like normally your knee comes back like even stronger than it was the first time. But I was definitely super nervous to come back and like start any sort of contact in soccer.
Did your quality of life change by any of these psychological disturbances? So did you experience any uncertainty, fear, stress, pressure, frustration?
I mean, yeah, for sure. Like definitely knowing that I was gonna be out for like essentially a whole year, there's like the anxiety and stress of, you know, is your position still gonna be there? Everybody else is having this extra year to progress and you're not. So feeling like you're gonna be behind skill-wise, and then also like those are a lot of people's teammates are like they're close friends, so because when they're at practice and I'm doing like rehab stuff, I'm not getting to spend time with them. So that obviously affected it a lot, because even when like I could like be at games, it still doesn't feel like I was like as much a part of it. So kind of like that definitely played a big part into it. I would say I experienced like honestly just like sadness, I would say sadness, and definitely some anxiety with the like piece of the progression piece of like skill wise. But I feel like I was just sad because I feel like I was missing out on a lot of stuff and I wasn't really a part of like their wins as much.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna jump to question 6. Is that
She
okay with you?
basically answered that.
So would you say that did you have any positive experiences with your social relationships, or were you mostly feeling isolated?
I would say that I did have like some positive experiences, especially with the people who were like really close to me. So I had like a few really close friends who were like making sure to like check up on me and like see how my rehab was going, or they would just like pop in. And I would definitely say like my friends were a bigger social support. Like, I mean, my coach would check in some, but like he was never a great like social person, so he wasn't that big of a support. But then, I mean, also like my family and my siblings just checking in. So I feel like because they know how like tolling mental health wise an injury could be, they were making sure to like check in extra. And I also had a friend who had torn her ACL before, so I feel like she especially like knows how it's like to like go through that. So she was also a really great support for me through that.
Okay, cool. Did you have a high motivation to recover? Do you feel your motivation to recover was related to your sport aligning with your personal values, interests, and goals?
I would definitely say that I like was really motivated to recover. I was like really into making sure I was doing all of my like therapy and like lifting, and even before like my surgery, I was like still doing, you know, running. I could do like abs or arms, and so I really wanted to like get back, just because soccer is like a good like outlet for me, and I wanted to get back with my friends, so I was like trying to do as much as I can. And then what was the second part of the question?
Do you feel your motivation to recover was related to your sport aligning with your personal values, interests, and goals?
So more like it's like personal autonomy kind of motivation. It's coming from within you, like that's why you want to improve or recover.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I've always been like super like motivated as a person, but I think because it was an outlet for me is another reason I like really wanted to get back, because I feel like if it was a sport that I didn't really enjoy as much, not that I wouldn't have wanted to get back, because I still love being active, but I like really love soccer, and I loved our team and what like our team stood for. Like, we were very close knit, and that was like really important to me, so I wanted to work really hard to get back. Whereas I feel like if the team atmosphere maybe wasn't as great, I might not have been as like driven to come back.
Okay.
Did you experience, I know you talked a little bit about sadness, whenever you were feeling sad or maybe anxious, do you feel like that impacted your recovery? If you remember?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, I'm like a pretty like motivated person, so I would say that like for the most part I didn't really let that like stop me from recovering. But I feel like what was really important is like when I was feeling like really like sad or like discouraged because like maybe I didn't meet like the milestone of my recovery, was like leaning on like those like social supports that we talked about earlier. Because I know I did, and a lot of trainers at my like school, they would give like kind of mental health days like throughout your recovery, because recovery is important, but obviously if you're not in the right mindset, like your mind and body can connect. So they would do that sometimes, and that was nice. But for the most part, just having those social supports kind of helped me like to keep going and like knowing I'm gonna get there, and I just need to keep pushing through.
What was the most important component to rehabilitation that supported your recovery?
Yeah, because we already talked about like social aspects. I honestly think something that was really beneficial for me is, since I was an athlete and I had like all my resources like right there, it was really easy for me to like go to rehab, because I mean the building that I lived at was like, you know, a little bit walk to like the center, like I could go in and like work out wherever. Where I feel like for people who tear their ACL, if maybe they're like not an athlete, they maybe only go to rehab like twice a week, where I was doing like rehab stuff like every single day. And I was also able to like be with the same person like throughout my whole recovery. So like he knew, like he was there when the injury happened, and he was there like the whole time. So I feel like I was able to build like a connection with him, and I really trusted him, where I feel like it'd be harder to like meet like a random like trainer or rehab person you don't know, and for them to tell me to like jump on one leg and I'm gonna be like, well, I don't trust you, like.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was really good to have somebody that I trust, like, with me through the whole rehab process.
I know you mentioned those mental health days, but was there any other psychological counseling or maybe like did your trainer talk to you about how you were psychologically doing while you were recovering?
I mean, sometimes like my trainer would ask like how I was doing, and I know my coach had like he'd check in at points with how I was doing, and like the same thing I mentioned with my friends earlier. Like I wasn't like seeing a counselor or a therapist or anything during that time, but it was mainly like having like my mentor at the school who would check in, and and she knew a lot about like mental health and sports, so like she was able to really help me like in that area. And then like I said, my coach and trainer, but I didn't have like a counselor.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who was recently injured?
I would say that it's really important to make sure that you have a good support system around you, and also to like take the time to realize that you're more than your sport and your sport doesn't define you. Because I think when you're injured, it's a really good time to figure out what outlets you can use besides athletics, since obviously if you're in college, like you're not always going to be doing that like type of athletics. So I think it's a really good time to like find yourself and like find good support systems.
All right, and then this is the last question. I'm gonna change it a little bit.
Because she's been out of playing for like an entire year, and then the injury happened like I guess 3 years ago.
Maybe like, what was the biggest thing you learned, or maybe like coping skills?
I mean, I guess you can say when you returned to play, how was your mental? I guess like you could ask her like, since she did it her sophomore year, maybe like going into her senior year after she had a year of playing under her belt. Well, no.
Junior.
Were you out your junior? No, you were just out your sophomore year, so you're back your junior year. So she had a year of playing under her junior year. So like you would ask about like senior year, coming back, and like how was that year different than maybe like your junior year? Because your junior year you were like what, probably a little more hesitant and still nervous because you were coming back from being out 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
Your senior year you were already like back. If that makes any sense. So you could ask like.
I mean, yeah, maybe like how like long after you returned to play did you feel like before? I don't know. Does that make sense?
I would say I don't even know that I necessarily felt the same mentally. I would say in one way that I feel like I gained so much perspective from being injured that I think physically the main thing that I noticed is that like I just didn't have as quick of like a reaction time, but like mentally I think after a little bit I was honestly better like going in like junior year, because like I didn't feel like soccer was like my identity as much anymore because I already experienced life without it. So I was like, you know, if this game doesn't go well or if I don't get as much playing time as I wanted, like that's okay because like at least I can play. So I feel like that perspective really came into play of like realizing that it's like really cool that I even get to play college soccer, and that like at least I can play right now because a year ago I wasn't able to. And I feel like having that mindset really helped me play more free, where like even my freshman year I was like very nervous about everything, and you know it's like, oh, if I do this, is that going to affect my playing time, that sort of thing. So I think it made me a lot more just grateful and like less nervous. And physically I wasn't like at the beginning coming back my sophomore year I was like scared, but then junior year I wasn't like super nervous about like tearing my ACL. I mean, if somebody ran like directly into my knee, then like yeah. But I wasn't always like thinking about it because I didn't wear a brace or anything like that.
That's a good answer. Good job, good job.
Thanks.
Alright.
Cool.
Okay, hopefully that was recording.
Was it?
Okay, yeah, it was.